Create a broadcast and live stream. Let me know. You might have to refresh a few times based on earlier.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like a delay. Um, yeah, I see it. It's live.
Okay, so we're live. Does the audio sound okay?
Uh,
Test,
yeah, I
test.
think so. Yeah,
Okay.
looks like it.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. Perfect. Sweet. So here we are back for Nuanced Take, episode 8. We have a few topics today, but they're spicy. So let's start with the first one. Axiom gets exposed for insider trading. Basically, the latest is that SAC dropped one of I guess the last week's like most hyped kind of like news. His original tweet got about 12 million impressions on X, and the post that he dropped earlier today already is on. It's well on his way to 4 million impressions. Basically, he goes to explain that a person that goes by Brooks Bauer uh, is one of the multiple employees allegedly abusing the lack of access controls for internal tools to look sensitive user details to insider trade by tracking private wallet activity since early 2025. Yeah, no, I know you have a post here that we can break down, but what do you think about that? It's pretty big news.
I mean, I think it's pretty nuts, right? The fact that, uh, well, one, it's Zach and him exposing Axiom for insider trading. I feel like I haven't heard Axiom in a really long time, but the fact that there's recordings of this Brooks person that you're talking about on a recorded call saying, I can track any Axiom user and find out anything about that person. Like that's kind of scary, right? But he's also just describing his crime of how he's scaling up from like what was it like 10 to 20 wallets at a time so it doesn't look or quote unquote look suspicious. Uh I don't know. That is pretty crazy to me. At least having a lot of the sensitive data when you work at a company like this that's doing I would say millions in transaction volume and generating millions in revenue. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, I like it always goes back to the same thing for me where, crypto always tries to onboard the masses, but all we get is like this really bad press all the time. And sometimes I actually think is justified. I mean, we're talking about, like you said, like a 9-figure company, um, essentially just just doing some very illegal stuff, right? I think this coming out right now. The funny thing about this is that like a lot of companies were kind of being speculated on Polymarket whether they would be the ones to be exposed. And it actually, I saw a take earlier by someone saying that there's probably more companies that thought, oh shit, that could be us. Let's like bet on this because the Polymarket volume ended up having like almost $25 million on a speculation on who this company would be. This tells me a couple things. One, some of the Axiom insiders definitely insider traded the Poly market themselves, you know, thinking that it was going to be them. It was them. But then there was also some other insiders at other companies thinking that, the expose was about them, right? So it just basically like goes back down to that saying is like, these are not serious people, right? And yeah, like how are we, how is crypto ever going to be taken serious as an industry when this just keeps happening time and time again? And honestly, is is just it's just embarrassing, to be honest, at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty ironic, right? So the volume that you're mentioning, I think it's like 38 million that people were betting which company is like the most corrupt, which is that in itself is just amazing for me to kind of look into. But I think in one of the posts or one of the I guess things that people found was that someone made like $109,000 dollars in profit by betting on Axiom 3 hours before that report actually dropped. So, I like to think that's enough confirmation that there probably was insider trading on the insider trading investigation, which makes it a bit more questionable. So, I mean, at this point, everything that people outside the space sees about crypto or just like the people involved in it, to your point, like it's all a joke, I think, to them. Like it's so hard to take people seriously when there are incredible builders and founders and companies that have been quietly building for the past decade, right? It's just greed knows no bounds. But at the same time, like someone like Zach to kind of do effectively what the SEC's been trying to do for years. I mean, I think he's just known, of course, getting a lot of the information firsthand himself, working through all the different channels and making sure that he can actually produce a solid expose or a finding, right? I'd like to think that in itself is also pretty good because we don't have enough of those kinds of people in the space.
Yeah, and this also begs the question, you know, sometimes like you think there's something wrong with the people that don't want to dox themselves, like for example, SAC, but then you go and see something like this where it's like, look, these companies were using your info to literally like track everything they could about you, right? So we're talking about some, a company that you think that, they have some modicum of honesty. And no, they're literally behind the scenes, like just like tracking every move in your wallets and using it to insider trade. So yeah, it's pretty insane. Also worth noting that this individual, despite deleting all of their tweets on their account, apparently they have already gone into a Twitter space and essentially said, I know what I did was wrong. Basically, he's cooked if he goes to court because he's already admitted guilt. So yeah, apparently, like, if you know anything about the law, it's like he just made a big mistake. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
people really
pretty
just
insane.
need to
Yeah.
tighten up here. It's just like, I mean, I was just on a call asking like my own take of like what's happened because the last time I spoke with this person, he was asking, we spoke about a year and a half ago, but what do you think is wrong with this space? And, it was just mentioning just the actors in this space have made it what it is today. Like, it's just, there's no way around it. Like, people are always going to want to pile on to, um, I would say, an issue. Like, as soon as they see blood, right, they're going to all congregate around it and they'll double down on making sure, like, an industry that isn't viewed favorably, has a history of scamming, and is only known for that publicly, despite all these great companies that exist, right? That's going to be the baseline for a lot of people's viewpoints on the space that they have yet to touch or don't even want to touch. It's kind of sad, right? Because again, I feel like there's so many great people here that have a lot of talent that want to really take this industry to the next level, but they keep shooting themselves in the foot because of stuff like this.
Yeah.
And these are the things that actually get the most coverage, right? It's not the fact that these companies are producing great products or working with great people. It's just what's the new flavor of scam today?
Yeah. And to your point, we are getting we're getting the same story of as time goes on, more and more brilliant, builders and founders are actually leaving the space for the likes of AI, and just moving on to like other industries, because like you said, is just the one of the reasons these people that are bad actors make so much, they make so much noise is because they operate under this like, how can we max extract, how can we like make the most amount of money in the most illegal way possible. And of course, like, who would want to be, who would want to be involved with that or play that game, or let's say even get overshadowed by that game. Not the good and honest hardworking people, trying to build cool stuff, things that actually provide value into the world. So yeah, I think definitely, just for like my own like moral compass, I will not be using like like any of these like trenching platforms anymore, like or terminals like Axiom and stuff like that. I think I'm done with that stuff, and I'll be putting my focus into like other things. But yeah, I think yeah, definitely like a lot to be judged about. Let's just say for the crypto world, we can do better. But yeah, it sucks.
I think I think that typically happens with a lot of high growth spaces though, right? I think for us, very familiar and obviously coming from the gaming space since the early days, I'd like to think even before most companies have existed or like creators have existed, like that space started out, I don't want to say completely scammy, but in almost a similar fashion where you had maybe some of the bad personalities or bad criticisms of the space kind of being the overriding thing people associated um, that industry with, right? Whether it was like misogyny or just like racism, all these different concepts of figuring out like gamers and their profiles sitting in a basements, right? Just kicking their feet up and like, it's not a serious industry. Like, even down to how I would say in the very early days of managing a lot of those talent, most were kind of, not even business minded at all, right? It's just like, I play games 10, 15 hours a day, stream it, don't really have a plan, and we'll see how this all shapes up. But I'd like to think one of the biggest benefits of that kind of coming around outside of pure watershed moment of, the Ninja Drake moment. I think beyond that, the traditional industry and people with actual working experience coming in, leveling up, not just the individuals and creators that exist in that space, but operationally, a lot of these companies that have that traditional pedigree, right, of building companies and scaling them. I think that actually helped tremendously. And I don't necessarily think that's the issue with crypto, right? With not enough traditional people with great experience coming in. I think it's just like the implications of, again, we talked about this a lot too. The implications of what crypto is at the end of the day, right? People are here to make money. I don't think there's any way to separate that at all. And when that becomes the prevailing thing to focus on, it kind of pollutes every other aspect of building a company, building a personality. Like it corrupts you at the end of the day, right? And I don't think people have really done enough or maybe even contributed enough effort to kind of separate that fact, right? Let's call a spade a spade. Like I think people want to maybe sweep that under the rug and say, "Oh, it's like not really here. I'm not really here for the money or just like making a lot of money." It's like just be honest with yourself, man.
That's a great take. I think we can segue now into our next segment. I'm gonna update our title here real quick. Okay, done. And then let me get this tweet up. So Discord is not stealing your identity anymore. Discord just announced that they're cutting ties with Persona, the AI software company backed by Peter Thiel, used for age and identity verification. I mean, this definitely made some rounds as well. I think initially the announcement was pretty simple. It was that the headline was basically that Discord was going to require everyone to essentially KYC. At first, a lot of people, especially like in the tech, crypto, and even AI space, were kind of like raising their eyebrows, like Discord, isn't that like a gaming kind of like a like the new age uh TeamSpeak, right? Like, why are they having to KYC? And of course, the primary reason is because there are a lot of miners on the on the app, so therefore they have to control it somewhat. But again, like there are certain things that have come out. For example, like the whole conspiracy theories behind Peter Thiel and his kind of like connections that he has, or whatever people don't like him for. I mean, I think it's I was a pretty apprehensive myself. I know that I ultimately didn't have to KYC because my account was already kind of like I suppose flagged over 18. I've been on Discord for a long time, and paying for premium and all that stuff. I suppose that qualifies me like as an adult. But yeah, any thoughts on your side?
Yeah, I mean, Discord dropping Persona is I feel like it's like one of the most talked about thing in the past month that this is kind of well when they first announced that decision that people would have to KYC, right? Uh, if anything, you just always have to follow the money. And I think Teal's connection with Founders Fund, him obviously being a co-founder of Palantir, and then Palantir having what is it, active contracts with government entities like ICE. I'd like to think they're all created. I mean, for what it's worth, you and I are probably OGs. Like I think I remember creating my account in like 2017, and it was primarily for me a better way to connect when I was using or better way to connect with friends or other gamers when I was using Ventrilo. That was like probably the thing that I was using the most in like I don't know, 2004, 2005. But beyond that fact, it's I like to think we share a lot of commonality with other people where it's like you just used a sign up to talk with your friends, right? And to use this as a tool to communicate. And now it's kind of going through this larger machine of surveillance of what maybe you can or can't say, or even like organize and participate in protests. Cause I think that's what was that one country a while back that had like a revolution and everyone was um, actually doing coordination on Discord? I'd like to think that was probably one of the bigger issues of people noticing that and kind of maybe even the government thinking like, oh, this is a threat to like national security and all these other things, right? But I think what a lot of people aren't talking about despite them pulling out, maybe it's because of public backlash or they're seeing a lot of usership drop or revenue drop from people canceling Nitro, which I think gamers, if you mess with them, like they'll come back tenfold. Like that has never been a surprise. But a lot of people don't realize Persona also still handles verification for things like Roblox, OpenAI, LinkedIn, a lot of other major social platforms or products, right? So it's great that Discord dropped them, but what about all these other platforms and tools people are using? It's just, I don't necessarily think Discord cutting ties is really just solving uh, the main problem. It just means that they're the only ones who got caught carrying, right? So what does that mean at the end of the day? Like, I think these issues, these targeting of specific companies wanting to surveil or find additional data points from its users, like it'll still go on, right? Discord just happens to be one of the larger platforms where there is a lot of use and activity. So I don't know. There seems to be that side missing where people don't recognize that just because it's Discord, it can't happen to other. Like it's been happening to other platforms for the longest time.
Yeah, I guess you're right in the rate that like you don't really mess with gamers because they actually do. You know, they're really internet savvy. They they know what's up. And I remember it happened the same thing when like Discord was gonna add a layer of Web3 rails, and
Mm.
basically the Discord community kind of revolted, and the CEO had to quickly kind of like take it back. I think this is the same case. I think like I said, like they're pretty in tune right away. They revolted in a big way, and the company's like, whoa, we're about to lose like a lot of revenue here, like let's kind of walk this back. But yeah, like I first, like you said, like it's a company that's been around for a while, but as soon as I hear like the ties to the likes of Palantir, I'm like, that just doesn't instill a lot of trust in me, right? It's like we know these are like military grade surveillance softwares. It's like why are you trying to make those connections? It's like it's not the place. Like it's an app for gamers to play games or whatever. Like some people use it for other things, but of course, I think the most important thing is that you're KYCing to protect minors, and apart from that, like
Yeah.
it should be the rest should be private, right? Um, so yeah, it's just something doesn't add up, right? They always tell you one thing, but ultimately the real agenda is often not communicated, right? So yeah.
It's hard not to make that connection, um, I think overall though, but I think the more interesting thing too is, like, I think the actual announcement from the CTO, and we're gonna have to maybe find the actual post,
Hmm.
of where he's admitted, like, they missed the mark. I think it's not entirely going away. I think they actually just punted it to the second half of this year. So I don't know if that's the signal for we're still thinking about it. It's on our minds. We're going to do it, and we're going to take some time to think about it. Like I feel like it's still going to happen, right? Because I mean, this is probably another topic. I think that we actually have for today, but just even for Anthropic right now, the looming decision for them based off of the government telling them, like, you either submit to what we're asking you to do and how your platform will operate, or we're going to take most of the funding, the contracts, the support that we gave you over the past, 6 months away, right? I feel like
Yeah.
that's kind of maybe what Discord is trying to bypass, where if there's enough government pressure to utilize their database for users that actually use the product, maybe they are also in the same boat as Anthropic, where they have to make uh, a specific time horizon decision. You either comply or like we shut you down, essentially, right?
Yeah, I think we can jump to segment 4 here. We can kind of like, let me update the title here. So because I want to talk about it, and it's really interesting actually. So basically, let me do the hook real quick. So Claude is killing the stock market. The latest report is that IBM stock shot down 13% after Anthropic announced that Claude can stream like COBOL code. So basically, IBM's entire business model, which is maintaining the legacy COBOL, uh, you know, now can be essentially done by Anthropic and Claude. So yeah, it basically lost $40 billion market caps, in a matter of like a few hours, which is insane. And this is a common theme that keeps happening with Claude and Anthropic announcing like newer features. It's getting so much to the point where like people are even not able to keep up, which is actually pretty funny, because normally companies are pretty slow to ship. But I think with the AI in the midst now, that's gonna change more and more. I think we're just gonna get to a point where like things happen without announcements because it's just happening all the time. But yeah, one of the things that I wanted to point out about what you said earlier, and we can rehash it, is that what the government apparently some of the government things that the government wanted to revolt about, when it comes to Anthropic, it was two rules that Anthropic had set, in relation to the government, and one of them was for Claude not to be used as surveillance for the general public, and the second one was for Claude not to be used to essentially like harm people. And basically, what the government is saying is that they don't want to abide by those rules, meaning they want to spy on you and they want to kill you using Claude, which is mind blowing. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to note that because I did read it, and I thought it was like this has to be fake, because like why would they want to, so yeah, they want to use the technology against you essentially, right? But yeah, I think it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Anthropic is a market weapon, right? So wiping off, what is it? I think we can also bring up the post that shows like it wiped out $40 billion
Yes.
off IBM's market cap, right? With just a blog post. So it's not really like a traditional like product launch or a customer win that dictated that. It was a freaking blog post. So I think at some point we probably just needed to talk about the fact that one AI company can casually vaporize billions or maybe even tens of billions in market value every time they publish, I don't know, a Monday morning press release, right? I don't think that's a well, one, that's insane, but two, it's like that's not a tech announcement, right? That's almost like a financial weapon. And I think if it does that enough times, it's only a matter of time before you actually understand like how closely tied a lot of these companies and products are with I would say government entities, right? And of course, like even the market, like everything is run off that, right? Every decision you make, like investor confidence, spending, investments, whatever it is, they're all tied. So it's pretty nuts that even on the concept of like vibe coding and the way that it's kind of brought, right? I would say overall software stocks are probably down close to 30% this year. Um, that's like extinction level repricing. I don't think there's any way to fudge or like tell a different story. It's like the market is actually telling you that every legacy software company is now a candidate for AI to come in and disrupt your company, whether you like it or not, right? I mean, it's IBM today, it could be a different company tomorrow. Is just whatever the flavor of the week is. That is a SaaS company. So yeah, I think it's pretty crazy for one major AI company to be able to influence the market that much. But I think that's just the reality of where we're at in this state.
Yeah, and they Anthropic has done it multiple times now, right? They've announced new features, it has a direct correlation with a certain stock just crashing. So they've proven that they definitely have like a bit of, like you said, like a weapon, like, that's something that they can systematically use to like crash markets, which is pretty insane just by adding like features and announcing them. Um, so yeah, I think it's definitely not going to slow down. If anything, is going to speed up. And I feel like they're just going to end up getting more and more pressure from the government, like being like, yo, you need to like not do this. Or I don't know, like if, I don't know who regulates that, but I suppose like these companies are not happy when this happens to them, right? Because they're,
And
they're,
I don't even know if that's their intention at all either, right? Like who really knows? And
yeah.
it could be calculated. It may be random or it's just they're too big of a player. But I mean, certainly the way that Anthropic has differentiated themselves is primarily like what you've described, right? As being non-compromising on safety and like how it's being used. So if anything, I feel like this sets like a line in the sand on like policy, but also like company stance of like how far they're willing to bend. And it almost seems at this point it's a matter of survival, right? Like I don't know how much the government can influence Anthropic to really be pressured into making a decision that compromises the overarching value of why that company was created. But this is probably a case study that we're seeing live play out, right?
Yeah.
And the founder himself or co-founders or whoever it is at the executive seat, I mean, I feel like people are going to be talking about this for years, and it probably will be the standard by which a lot of companies, a lot of policy is measured.
Yeah. I completely agree. I'm normally pretty savvy and in the loop on like like announcements, and Anthropic is one of those companies where I actually can't keep up. Like I literally do not have time or the bandwidth to go in and look up at every new feature and very capable, I guess, quality of life improving workflows that they're providing at the moment. I don't even have time to like look into all of them. I'm gonna have to like wait a little longer and then try to see if what the best stack they offer is. But yeah, it's pretty insane, and I don't say that lightly. It's like unbelievable what they're doing right now. They're even like, I think they just published today. I mean, like I said, didn't have time to see it. they're quickly providing like OpenClaw features. So they're trying to basically like make OpenClaw obsolete. They're gonna make their own, and that's
Yeah.
probably like on their on their roadmap for soon. So yeah, it's insane. Like I have a feeling that we're gonna keep talking about Anthropic and in this show for a while. Week after week, we'll see. Um, we can hop in here now to our last segment. Let me just update my title before I speak. Okay, so the reason I wanted to speak about this is like an overall like sentiment check for crypto. Um, the hook is essentially Vitalik won't stop dumping ETH. Over the past 3 days, Vitalik sold thousands of ETH. I think his total last time I checked was up until like $8 million of ETH sold. And basically, the reason I wanted to include this segment, Noah, is because it got me thinking a little bit about what crypto is and how and how people choose to perceive like value and even believe in it. So, for example, the first thing, and I guess this is like the crypto that everyone actually knows in the world, and it's Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, we know the alias, right? It was founded by Satoshi. No one really knows what Satoshi is. Satoshi doesn't have, I guess we actually don't know, right? He doesn't have gender. He doesn't have religion. He doesn't have political affiliations. He doesn't have a face or like prejudice or all this other stuff. And that's basically, as far as I know, that's the only cryptocurrency, at least notable one, that no one knows like who really is behind. And then again, if I know this because I talk to a lot of traders and et cetera, et cetera. If Michael Saylor started selling Bitcoin through MicroStrategy, Bitcoin would probably nuke to like 30, 20K, like pretty fast within like hours, if not like in a day or two. And that's because like this, Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, they have like, I don't know, they have like, it's single digits of Bitcoin, but it's like, I forget if it's 1, 2, 3%, whatever they have already. But yeah, but it's too much, right? So even Bitcoin is starting to become like little by little, like a little bit more centralized by just people like accumulating so much so much of it. And then I see founders like Vitalik, Vitalik is like, he literally has a political affiliation. People know like who he is, what his gender is, what his beliefs are, all his like everything that he stands against, everything that he stands for. And there we have like a this character that is very polarizing, I feel like, because a lot of people like him, but a lot of people don't like him either. And I'm thinking like, if I was if you believed in something truly and you saw the founder just like dumping it, that doesn't make me want to be like a holder of ETH or like have it like within my personal portfolio, when I'm like, no, this guy's literally like the founder of this, just like dumping it on my head. So yeah, I like to get your thoughts, like if you have any on this. And I don't know how like we're supposed to overcome this, like, because it just doesn't feel right. um like and he just doesn't care, he just keeps doing it, like everyone's calling it out. But yeah, he just doesn't care. So I want to hear your take on this.
Yeah. So Vitalik, I mean, Vitalik keeps dumping ETH, right? I don't think that's ever gonna change or slow down. Personally, well, I would say there's like three distinct things that like I'll probably just chat a little bit about, right? One is the overarching optics problem. Like personally, I actually don't care like what he says the money's for, right? Like if the founder of Ethereum is selling, I don't know, $43 million worth of ETH while the price drops 37% in a single month, right? That optic seems pretty clear without needing any other narrative. Like you can write as many blogs or publish as many blogs as you want about like privacy research funding or whatever it is, but the chart doesn't lie, right? Like the person who actually built this is exiting. It's just I don't think there's any other way to interpret that, right? But then there's also this idea that it seems that ETH, or at least based off of a lot of the posts that he's been writing on X, like it kind of seems they're also having an identity crisis. Like as you're saying, even like with Bitcoin or some of these other larger players, like there's no narrative right now for them, and I feel like that's a big problem because it's not an inflation hedge, right? It's down 60% while something like gold is rallying, and it's not a growth asset. I think we've all kind of seen that. It's still underperforming Bitcoin, and equities. Certainly not a yield play. I think the current staking percentage is somewhere below like 3% or something. And then for it being like a momentum trade, like I mean, 6 months of losses, dude. Like that's what is that? I think the best argument that I've seen for ETH right now, or any relevancy actually, is I think that news about BlackRock saying that they're filing an ETF. But you'd also have to wonder if a company like that is watching, the founder liquidate. Like it's not really giving confidence signals. And then really the last thing for me is just like I think what the Ethereum Foundation announced is like quote unquote mild austerity. Like if we just think about that phrase, right? The founder behind the second largest cryptocurrency in the world is effectively tightening its belt while like a competing or maybe like a equivalent company like Solana is getting Alibaba demos, Citi group tokenization pilots, and Goldman Sachs, like a large institution buying into that. I feel like at this point, institutions aren't even waiting for Ethereum to figure out its story, right? I think they're just moving on and going to other places where they are either hedging their bets or see more confidence in. But seeing that sell off, um, it's probably the most bearish signal you can probably send to the space without saying a word, right? And I'd like to think it does not bode well. Even if price action is going up, and I mean it's above like 2000, from what I last saw. But even then, I I'm not confident at all, right? And I think it's a consistent thing where he's been this way, or maybe has a externalized or talked about his plans or what he's doing very publicly over the last couple of years. Like there doesn't seem to be any upside of like this is what we're planning to do. It's simply like we're cutting, we're not as large believers in this space or like the market or whatever it is, right? Kind of seems like they're just compounding off the negatives than they are on the positives. And when you see one of the most public figures that is well respected, or maybe was well respected, kind of leaning into that, kind of does not instill a lot of great confidence.
No. And just to leave everyone with like one last stat to think about, because we were here last cycle. Last cycle, Bitcoin all-time high, 60 something, 60 something K. Ethereum all-time high last cycle, 40, 4,800, 4,700. This cycle, Bitcoin all-time high 126K, almost 100% increase of like, and Ethereum's all-time high this cycle, dude, it was like it was so ridiculous. It was like 1 or 2% increase to previous cycle on the all-time high. I think it literally hit 4,800 again, and that's it. And then it went back down. So it's like it didn't do anything this cycle. Like compare. So people that held, who bought an all-time high last cycle, they got like a mini their money back. They got their money back. They probably lost actually because no one times the top. So yeah, it's just I don't know what happened. It's just the narrative's completely died off for them.
And I think that begs the question, right, for the industry, like, where do you go from here? Or like what comes next? Like I think I've personally just made a bet myself that it's less about even down to like my personal associations or even like working with specific companies. It's not like with a wallet or an exchange or any other DeFi like specific companies that deal in those terms. I feel like it's based off of consumer habits, use cases, um, and when I think about those things, the most prominent, I would say, verticals that come up in this space, I mean, it's probably less than a handful, right? In my opinion, it's like zero knowledge. That's, I think, a really great space. It still has yet to develop. I think there's still a few companies that are trying to take the biggest market share, find the right way to do it. Certainly, stable coins. I think that's going to be a standard. Um, Despite however the crypto industry pans out temperature wise or investment wise or activity wise um, in privacy, right? Like maybe some people feel like that's not as important, but I think for large institutions, other operators, other companies that may want to enter this space, that seems to be a prevailing issue that I think people want solved. Um, and maybe it is just going back to those basics of figuring out how to anchor yourselves onto a founder or a builder or a company that is hyper focused on making those more mainstream, especially in crypto, than just saying the Web 2 or the trad spaces need this, right? I don't think it's anywhere else focused outside of that. Like even the confidence layer for me for even crypto creators, like I have none. I've worked with the top. I've worked with many individuals in different shapes or forms. And out of all the spaces that I've worked with creators on, this is the poorest like aligned place that I've seen. Right. And I think that says a lot about not just value alignments, but also direction. And mostly, like, I'm bullish with creators in any space that I work with because I'd like to think they are the future of how that space develops because they're large voices, they're influential, they can bring and deploy audiences and trust, right? But I think this space just overwhelmingly has too many, I would say, counter issues that are all in one shape or form connected with each other that makes it hard to separate that. So even the lead voices it's very hard for me to trust fully, right? So I don't know. I feel like if people are still trying to get into that space, I mean, there still are opportunities that can make themselves available, but at the end of the day, like I feel like it's just right now a mess.
Yes, you know it is a mess when the literally one of the faces of crypto is a guy by the name of Zach XBT, and his literal brand is exposing bad actors in crypto. So yeah, that's how you know that how bad it is. But yeah, I think anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up, Noah?
No, I think that's